Following program is classified PG. Parental guidance is recommended for younger viewers.
When an aircraft crashes or a worker is injured or killed, when boats collide or buildings collapse, investigators from New Zealand's government agencies swing into action. Tonight, we'll follow these men and women as they gather information, interview witnesses, and analyse evidence. What went wrong? Could it be stopped? Someone must find the answers. This is the job of the special investigators.
We were tipping a load of dirt off and our tray stuck. Then I said to myself, don't get under there, Lindsay, it's too dangerous. The speed that this thing came down at, the tray just drops almost instantaneously.
The owner of a earth moving business has had both of his arms crushed under a truck tray. It would appear that one arm has been amputated.
Inspector Russ Newton is responding to an urgent call-out to a construction site on Waiheke Island. With little information so far, he prepares himself for the scene ahead.
Normally, when people witness such events, they're going to be emotionally charged. It's going to be quite devastating for them to have witnessed what they've witnessed. Often they resent our presence because they feel that we're just there to, pick on people. So a great deal of care has to be taken in how we approach witnesses.
Construction runs in the family for Inspector Russ Newton. With a father and brother both in the trade, workplace health and safety is personal. The investigators work closely with the police. Constable Alf Blair shares with Russ his findings so far.
Okay. Male owner of an earth-moving company has had both of his arms crushed under the tray of his truck. He still has both arms intact, but...
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't know that.
We're up here, Ngāniroa, and we'll be going out along the north of the island, Thompson's Point. He's got a son who works for him, but apparently he was at a different part of the site working when the accident occurred. And the youngest worker, I believe, was at the scene of the accident.
While the injured man is being airlifted to Middlemore Hospital, Russ must lose no time in establishing exactly what happened and who was involved.
Right.
Still shocked by the morning's events, 19-year-old Raoul Hickman tells Russ that the hydraulics failed just as he was attempting to tip a full load of earth.
Now, when it stopped lifting, you put it in the hold position. Okay. Now, once you had it in the hold position, you advised Mr. Ingham. Okay.
Memories of the horrific incident are still vivid in Raoul's mind as he relives the awful moment when he watched in horror as 9 tons of earth slammed down on Lindsay Rankin, trapping him underneath the truck tray.
Just come straight down.
Okay.
Excellent. Within half a second, just straight down.
Okay.
And grab the bulldozer, which is over there.
That was quick thinking.
Oh, he's sort of screaming out.
Yeah. Hard in that situation, mate. Yeah.
Raoul had hardly used the bulldozer before, but following Lindsay's desperate instructions, he managed to maneuver it next to the truck. For the first agonizing moments, it seemed it wasn't going to work, but on his second attempt, Raoul succeeded in lifting the truck tray long enough for Lindsay to get free. Russ has shown the tiny gap where Lindsay's forearms were flattened. At this stage, it looks like the incident began with a mechanical failure. But Russ has more questions before he can decide whether human error has also played its part.
Just wonder if you tried lifting it now. We'll stand back, of course. We'll just see if we can see any bleed here where it's coming out of. Oi, that'll do, bud. Where did that come from? There. Oh, no. So it's coming out of the reservoir. Never had one.
Kevin Mottram speaking.
Yeah, Kevin, Russ here, mate.
Yep.
I'm over on Waiheke. We've had a look at this truck.
Russ arranges for an independent engineer to check over the truck while he waits to speak to Lindsay Rankin.
Mate,
Returning to the mainland for the next stage in his investigation, Russ must now establish who is responsible for safety on the site. Key questions will be, was the equipment properly maintained? Was the site being run in a safe manner? The crucial question, could this accident have been prevented? Just a few days later, Russ is waiting to hear back from the engineers, and a new factor is being considered, the weight of the earth in the tray of the truck.
a lot is actually hinging on their report, and particularly the loading of the truck. We need to establish who loaded the truck, under whose orders. Was it the employee who loaded the truck? Did he overload it? If it was overloaded.
To advance his investigation, Russ now needs to interview Lindsay Rankin, the victim of this horrendous accident. The last word Russ had on Lindsay is that they were operating to try and save his arms.
Yes, dealing myself the gruesome details of his injury.
Horror came to this peaceful corner of Waiheke a few days ago, when Lindsay Rankin found himself pinioned to one of his own trucks. Inspector Russ Newton heads for Middlemore Hospital for his first interview with Lindsay.
I'm just going to work through with him the events of the day, what happened, why he ended up putting his hands into a very dangerous position.
It's only 5 days since the accident, but incredibly, Lindsay seems to be well on the way to recovery.
None of the major arteries were cut, just a few small veins.
Yeah. What about the other arm? What damage did he have?
Well, that was squashed down to about that wide.
Yeah.
Physically, when I was on the ground, it was flat.
Lindsay explains to Russ the thinking behind his actions. With the tipping bed of the truck jammed in the upright position, he was working on the hydraulic valve when disaster struck.
See, at that point, my thinking was that the valve in the cab was on hold,
Yeah.
right? So everything was relatively safe.
Right.
And I didn't contemplate this valve firing out of the housing at all. I made the mistake.
Lindsay remained amazingly calm in his terrifying situation. The truck's hydraulics were still not working, but with great presence of mind, he screamed at Raoul to get the bulldozer to lift the 9-ton truck tray off his trapped arms.
Just in your own mind, are you quite happy with the actions that Raoul took?
My life's indebted to him. I'm indebted to him. He saved me. So, to that point of view, he's a hero.
Although Lindsay's actions have harmed only himself, he was the person responsible for the safe operation of the site, and Russ must still consider whether there has been a serious breach of the law.
One of the worst contacts, if there is going to be a prosecution, and if it is against him or his company, is going to be having to present him with a summons.
A few days later, Russ meets with independent specialist Dennis Smith of TSV Consulting and gets his verdict on exactly what went wrong with the truck.
So there was no fault that we could find with either the diverter valve or the main hydraulic valve. Perhaps the diverter valve might have been sticky through lack of use, but other than that, it's a standard installation.
The truck's hydraulic mechanism has a diverter valve that allows the tipping mechanism to work with a trailer if one is attached. In this case, with no trailer, Raoul had inadvertently switched over to the diverter valve in the middle of tipping the main tray.
Unfortunately, that diverter valve then stuck and stopped the leaving some 10 tons of wet clay sitting up in the air.
That was when Lindsay made his disastrous decision to try and free the valve there and then.
The operator was actually tapping the spool with a hammer because it had become slightly sticky. When he tapped it with a hammer, it would have come out like a bullet out of a gun. One of the prime requirements before you work on any hydraulic vehicle with a tray in a raised position is to put some safety blocks to prevent the tray from coming down.
Russ now knows it wasn't the loading of the truck that caused the problem, and although Raoul had accidentally engaged the diverter valve, it was Lindsay who made the drastic mistake of working under a raised truck tray without safety props. His inquiry's complete. Inspector Russ Newton makes a final visit to Waiheke, where Lindsay is waiting to hear if he is going to face further action from the Department of Labour.
You want to have a look at my medallion, Russ?
Oh, I'd love to, mate. Ooh, that's a good one.
Yep.
Hey.
Yep. No, that's perfect.
Oh,
I can live with that.
yeah. There was a bit of a knee trembler coming back here, and
Very much so. Very much so. Mainly mentally, I seem to have had a loss of confidence,
Yep.
and getting back on site has helped that.
Yep.
Facing his fears, Lindsay bravely recalls his actions at that fateful day, this time with full safety props in place.
I went to reassemble this cover back onto the valve, and when I did that, the valve itself left the body out onto the ground, and all the oil just dropped straight out. The hoist came down very rapidly, almost instantaneously. The deck was down on my head as well, so I'm giving Raoul directions like this.
What you've got here now, as far as the propping is concerned, is that what you would normally have
Yes,
in
that would be our standard procedure. Put 2 posts under there and some secondary blocks back there.
It's the moment of truth for Lindsay. He survived traumatic damage to his own body, but will his business now have to survive a court case? The department is taking no further action at this time.
Well, it's a tremendous relief.
I just hope that everything comes right.
The safety precautions have always been in place. Normally, just this one lapse, and what more reinforcement do you need than one lapse when you get caught?
Russ's report acknowledges the price Lindsay has already paid. It is not a mistake he will make again.
Thank you very much, Russ.
You're welcome.
It's a good outcome for Lindsay and for Inspector Russ Newton.
If you want further information about the safety messages in this program, go to tvnz.co.nz. Keyword, Special Investigators.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.